Hi everyone, today I'm going to be teaching you how to create a super easy watercolour flower card painting. This tutorial is for anyone who wants to learn how to create the easiest type of watercolour cards. Anybody can do this, so if you've never used watercolour before, this is absolutely for you. So to begin with, I used a really bright lemon yellow, and this is going to be for the centre of the flowers. And I used this colour across the page just to put some small dots down for the centre of every single flower. At this stage you want to leave a really big gap between all of these dots, as you don't want the flowers overlapping before they've dried. And then I mixed green and blue to create a really deep, vibrant mix between the two. Don't worry too much about the colours though, you can use absolutely anything you want for this flower, it will work with any colour. I then used the same colour in a separate palette and added a lot of water to this. So I had two of the same colour and one was really dark, and because of the added water, this was then a lot lighter. Once you're happy with the colours, we're going to use the lightest shade to create the petals around that yellow centre. For the petals, you do want to use a relatively small paintbrush. I'm using a size 2, I will link it down below as well for you to have a look at. So because the flowers that we are painting are small, it is just better to have a small paintbrush to coincide with this. And you want to start off going as close as you can to that yellow. You don't want to overlap it, and the yellow centre does need to be dry as well. So going in with that lighter shade, you can then extend the petal, make it wider as you come out, and have a curved edge to it. It's always better to have a curved edge if you're wanting more of that delicate feel. It's less harsh to look at. So yeah, I do think this is the best thing to do for a beginner's tutorial, as you can create a really dainty painting. Once you've got that petal shape, you can fill in the rest of the petal with the same colour. Now you don't want too much paint on your paintbrush for when you're doing this, as it will become really blotchy, and as it dries it will separate in some areas, collect in others, and it will just look a little bit messy. So the less paint on your brush actually the better. I'm also making sure I separate all my petals, so none of them are touching, and I would recommend doing either 3 or 4 petals at a time, letting this dry, and then you can go in at a later stage and overlap this with more petals if you want to. This means that all of your petals aren't going to merge together and create a really blotchy mess of just blue/green, so I'd always recommend letting this dry beforehand. Now that you've got the fundamentals, you can practice this whilst also painting the card. You don't have to keep using scrap pieces of paper or anything like that. You can also paint different flowers that have a little bit more to them than just the standard that we started with. So for example, I painted more flowers that had a little bit of a different perspective. And by perspective, I mean the way you would actually look at the flower and the shape that would take due to the angle that you are looking at it. So for some of the flowers, I had more of a curved top petal that was slightly larger, and then 2 petals either side of that curving upwards a lot more. And then going into the bottom and adding just a small petal, and this really does make the flower look like it's pointing upwards far more, rather than you looking at it from that onward face-on perspective. And just these subtle changes that you can add to each flower really help bring a uniqueness to it, but it's still all very much the same. It doesn't look like anything is overbearing, as things are generally the same size. So everything is very cohesive but also slightly different, and it really does add to the whole feel of the card and ties everything together. So now that you're happy with the variety that you are creating in terms of all of the different perspectives, maybe different sizes, if you wanted to do things like that, you could really mix it up. You can then go in with that darker shade that we pre-mixed at the start. This is a really good way to get a variety of different shades in there, so all of the flowers, even if they are the exact same, them different shades of that colour just really contribute to this painting. So although I'm now going in with a different shade, I'm not doing anything different in terms of the flowers that I'm creating. Each of the petals that I'm creating have that really nice curve to it, and get gradually wider the further out I go, and it's quite small towards the centre. I would then recommend going in with that lightest shade again and creating petals, but before these dry I would go in with the darker colour and just dot this in the centre. So I'm not going into the yellow, all I'm doing is using that dark colour, dotting it on the edge of the petal that's closest to the middle and letting this naturally bleed out. And you really don't want a lot of paint on the brush for this, especially if your flowers are really small like mine were. I only needed the tiniest amount, as if you've got more paint on your brush it's going to bleed out more, and that dark colour will just completely overtake that lighter shade. So you only need a little bit to do this, and yeah, naturally letting that bleed out, seeing how it does turn out, and this is going to give you a better understanding of how watercolour does blend together. At this stage you can now go in with all of these different ways to paint the flowers with the different shades, the different perspectives, and we can really start to tie everything together. So filling the page up completely or leaving a little space free for some calligraphy like I did in the top right hand corner, but you don't have to do this, you can completely fill the page or as much of the page as you want to. You can have flowers that overlap, as long as the first one that you painted is dry, go over that, that'll look really nice as well. So I would recommend mixing things up, going in and adding as many of these as you want or as little as you want if you want it to have more of a minimalistic feel. To tie everything together as well, you can go in with a nice earthy green and just add a few little lines between all of the flowers. I did mine coming out from the bottom for the majority of the lines, and I also put a couple of little leaves in there. I kept these really thin and I didn't add too many either, as I really did want the focal point to be the flowers, so don't feel pressured to do this. You don't even need to add any of these little lines, it's just a nice way to fill the space. And now I'm happy with the actual painting. I went in with my calligraphy pen to finish and I wrote best wishes in that top right hand corner, left myself a little bit of room to be able to do this. And of course you can write absolutely anything you want for the occasion that you are going for. Then I took off the washi tape, as always. My favourite part of any painting that I do is doing this. It's extremely satisfying. And yeah, that is it. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial as much as I have. Like I said at the start, this is a really easy watercolour card. Anyone can create it. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you check out the rest of my watercolour card painting series, and you can find out how to create a variety of different cards for any occasion. Bye guys, thank you.